What happens to us after we die? Do we cease to exist? Or do we live on? This may be the biggest question that mankind has ever asked. Where do we go when we die? And who is there to greet us? And why? What exactly does it mean to become a spiritual person? Does it consist of following predetermined laws? Or is it a personal journey? These are the types of questions that we will discuss. Welcome to the Regression Session. Welcome back to the Regression Session. My name is Ian. In this episode, we're going to be hearing from Ellenmorris Tiegerman. She's a licensed speech pathologist who taught in the departments of communication and psychology at a university in New York. She's also the founder and CEO of a large charity that provides educational services to autistic children and adults on Long Island. Additionally, she's the author of a novel called Tenure Denied, and you can find a link to her charity and the novel in the show notes of this episode. If you've had a spiritual experience, if you have past life memories, if you're a psychic medium, or anything else that fits into this puzzle, shoot me an email. I'd love to hear from you. My email is theregressionsession@gmail.com. So without any further ado, let's move right into tonight's interview with Ellenmorris. Hey, Ellenmorris, thanks for coming on to the show.
Thank you very much for inviting me, Ian.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I was saying before we started talking, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show because like I was saying, when academics such as yourself come on, it really lends a little bit more credibility, in my opinion. So if you don't mind, could you, just for the audience's sake, tell me again a little bit about your background?
Sure. So I'm a student in life, and I've been in school for most of my life, and I've never left school. I started at Brooklyn College. I got a bachelor's degree, and then I got a master's degree in speech language pathology. I enjoyed school so much that I also got a doctoral degree at City University, and then I started teaching at Queens College. I moved to Delphi University to the Department of Communication Disorders. I got a master's degree in special education and then a master's degree in social work. And I retired from Delphi University a few years ago because I was the CEO of a school for autistic children, and I provide educational services for about 600 to 700 families on Long Island and New York City. We have a number of campuses, and in 2010, 2011, I also started programs, dehabilitation programs for adults with disabilities. So we run the gamut. The life cycle from preschool children all the way up through adulthood.
That's fantastic. And what's that? So you said it was a charity, right?
Yes, we're a 501c3 charitable program and institution. And I don't think I would have gotten involved with a for-profit business. I think my heart has always been in terms of providing services for very diverse communities and families. Most of the children that we work with are referred to us. They come from legal services or legal aid.
Okay, gotcha. And is there do you accept donations? Is there a place where people who are listening, if they feel like they identify with your mission, they can go and maybe donate to your charity?
Sure. We have a website, Tiegerman, Tiegerman.org, O-R-G. That's our website. And you can go to the website and learn about all of the programs and children and adults that we provide services for. And there's a little box at the top that says donate now. And you can just click that box.
All right, perfect. And I'll definitely include that in the episode description. So if anybody listening, if you want to support Ellenmorris's mission of supporting children and teenagers with learning disabilities and even adults with learning disabilities, head over to Tiegerman.org. A link will be in the description. So, Ellenmorris, tell me a little bit about how you became interested in the past life memories and past life regression phenomenon.
So when I was a teenager, I had the opportunity to travel with my brother, and we went to Greece. We traveled to the island of Crete, and we visited the archaeological sites on the island. And we were part of a tour group, and we came to one of the sites, and I had this overwhelming sensation, I guess would be the best word, this overwhelming sense that I had been there. And I thought it was so bizarre that it frightened me. So I pulled away from the group and I walked around outside a little bit, and I, calmed myself down, and I started to focus on, what I was going to see at the site itself. And I began to recall or remember what was there. And it really shocked me and, frightened me even more, because these were very vivid memories. I looked around for my brother, and we went into the archaeological site, and it confirmed the layout that I had remembered. That was my first experience in terms of past life memories. And I didn't know what to do with that. I really didn't. So I pushed it away as much as I possibly could, and I suppressed it over the years. It was not something that, I look back on in a way in which I wanted to go near or touch. So I stayed in school and I pursued my career, and it kept coming back to me. About 5 or 6 years ago, I received an email from a colleague of mine telling me that Dr. Brian Weiss was going to give a seminar at the Omni Center in Rhinebeck, New York. And my colleague asked me, would I consider going? And I just looked at the email. It was like very strange, because I had just been thinking about this past life memory that I had. And I decided it was time. So I signed up for this week-long seminar with Dr. Brian Weiss. I hadn't read any of his books. I had never seen him before. And I went. And it just changed everything for me. It just changed everything, because it gave me the opportunity to not only meet him, but also to meet all of these other therapists who were coming from all over the world and who had been involved with past life regression and who were committed to this entire area that I had just stepped into. And that's how I got started in terms of past lives.
That's an awesome experience. Probably a little confusing, I would imagine. So when you showed up to this in Greece in the archaeological site, could you describe the feeling of it? So did you just kind of instinctually already know where everything was, or get a sense of just like familiarity, or was it more like a deja vu?
No, there was a real familiarity in terms of where things were located, and what it actually looked like, um, sort of three-dimensionally as it originally was. Um, and I think that's what frightened me, that it was so real and I could actually visualize it in my head.
Okay, and were you able to like learn anything that verified what you were feeling or experiencing? Like, did they have any recreations or anything like that you were like, okay, this is creepy because that's what I saw in my head before I even saw this or anything like that?
Well, I had the opportunity to talk to the tour guide. And, I asked her a lot of questions about, where things were and, different, for example, one of the things I was very curious about is in my memory, things were very colorful. So, you know, was there any verified data or scientific information in terms of how things were painted? And she said yes. And I, proceeded to ask her about, different colors and, what kinds of things were actually painted and what kinds of things, artifacts were actually found. So some of the memories that I had, I could verify with her in terms of the descriptions that she had, and she showed me in the book that she was carrying. So I found that to be very, very helpful. But I think the overwhelming sense was that I felt comfortable with it, and it was very familiar.
Gotcha. And you did you know about the painting that they had done in Greece and in their architecture before this experience? Were you aware that they had painted and everything like that?
No, I had no knowledge of that whatsoever.
Yeah, because I personally I'm familiar with the coloring and how the process is where they can go through and actually microscopically look at the paint pigments that have faded over time, and they're able to tell
Right,
what colors they were. But I didn't even know about that until a few years ago, and
right.
so it's not necessarily common knowledge because when you think Greece, you think those white pillars, and it's really tempting to just think that all the architecture and all the art was kind of just like plain white, maybe like brown and black, very fairly primitive. But in reality, it was really colorful. So the fact that you were able to remember that without knowing about it beforehand really speaks about you know giving you more credibility to your experience.
The other thing that I would share with you is, if I were going to jump ahead, in this life story that I'm sharing with you, um, I had decided that I was going to, while I was teaching at Adelphi, I was going to write a novel. And the reason that I had decided that is, while I was an academic, all those years, I had written textbooks, university textbooks, but I had never ventured into the world of fiction. So I decided, I would try this. And I wrote a manuscript and I showed the manuscript. It was very funny because my father was a poet and a writer. And I showed him the manuscript and he said to me he wasn't impressed. So he said to me, stay teaching at the university, run your school, but leave the world of fiction, leave it alone. Okay. So I was disappointed and I took the manuscript and I just put it in a closet. Okay. And I left it there for a couple of years. And I went to the seminar with Dr. Weiss. And when I left the seminar, something had clicked in my head. And what had clicked, Ian, was that I then had the theme to that manuscript that I had thrown in my closet. I was going to take the manuscript and I was going to rewrite it. And the orientation that I was going to write about in the book was a past life experience for the main character. And that's how the novel, Tenure Denied, actually got completed. It was a combination of my own personal life experience as a teenager, combined with the experience that I had at that seminar with Dr. Weiss, and some of the things that I saw at the seminar that were very meaningful, and being able to complete a project. Because I think one of the things in my life, I don't know, I'm sure your listeners would have, a similar kind of sense of completion. It's hard to start something and then not finish it. And here I had started this project, this book, this fiction book, and I had just left it in a closet. So for me, being able to actually dig it out and then complete it was very satisfying for me. And that's how the book got finished.
And for the audience, that book is called Tenure Denied, and it's a novel, and it's available on Amazon, right?
Correct.
Is it available in like hardback in bookstores or anything?
Well, it's available at Book Review, which is in Huntington, New York. It's being showcased there, but it's mainly on Amazon.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so check out Ellenmorris's book, Tenure Denied. I haven't had a chance to read it myself, but I am planning on it's on my list to get to. But yeah, well, a question I have for you is when you went to your initial experience in Greece, obviously the thought of reincarnation, I would assume, couldn't be farther from your mind because you were there to see an archaeological dig site.
Right.
So did you believe in past lives or reincarnation before this point?
No, not at all. Not at all. Not at all. I grew up in a fairly traditional family. So, my religious instruction was fairly traditional. I didn't know anything about other than what the word was. I really had no experiences or even read about reincarnation. So it was the furthest thing from my mind.
And I would imagine that being an academic, the most common, I don't want to call it a dogma, but it almost is a dogma at this point, is materialism. Did you fall in line with that side of the fence of the materialist mindset?
I don't think I would call it materialism. I think what I would refer to it as traditionalism. I think the classic religions are very well established in most Western cultures. So I hadn't really been exposed to some of the Eastern philosophies and the Eastern religions, where there seems to be more of a fluidity in terms of belief systems. So for me, once I had this experience, it sort of shook me because I didn't know quite what to do with it. And it wasn't until, I had the opportunity to attend Dr. Weiss's seminar that it really opened my mind to other possibilities.
Yeah, and what's interesting about Dr. Weiss is that he, from what I understand, he started out in the materialist camp because he's a psychiatrist.
Right.
And that's what they teach you when you go to school for psychology, because I took a psychology class from Yale University. Um,
Hmm.
and then I never went any further with it because I was bored out of my mind. But literally, the very first thing that they started teaching was materialism. And for anybody who doesn't know what materialism is, it basically is saying that because your brain can be damaged, and if your brain is damaged, your personality can change. That means that when your brain dies or shuts off, your personality goes away because your personality is housed in the brain. And that's kind of the camp that Dr. Weiss was in as well. And he slowly, over time, moved into believing in reincarnation and talking about it from a very clinical point of view and a very research oriented mindset. So when you went there to his seminar, what was that like?
It was really an overwhelming experience for the week because there was so much information from therapists, from him. There were so many interesting experiences in terms of watching past life regressions. It was wonderful. It really was. And to tell you honestly, Ian, unless people were pretty good actors, then I saw what I saw, and that was people being regressed. It was very impressive. Uh, some people had, very interesting past lives that they were able to share, and they were able to talk about the experiences while they were being regressed, but also afterwards, because what he basically did is he allowed people after their regression to reflect on the experience that they had had. I also had the chance to speak to him. So at 5 o'clock every single day, I would get on a queue and, I'd wait online to speak to him, and I would question him about different things, whether it was hypnosis or the past life experience that, we had just observed. It gave me a chance to, ask him my personal questions and, get some of his insights. And because he's practiced for so many years, he's just a wealth of information. I really, recommend, if you have an opportunity, if your readers have an opportunity to, get, sign up for one of his seminars. He travels extensively. It's really worth attending because he's wonderful to listen to.
He's very knowledgeable, and some of the I know that he has videos, like he was on Oprah, and he has videos of regressing people, and it almost seems fantastical. And if you're not lined up with it, it can seem that way. And like you said, you know, the people that go through these regressions, it's a real experience, and they can be very powerful and very emotional. Um, and they can be very shocking, and sometimes they can be traumatic as well. And
Yes.
yeah, they can be very traumatic. But the fact that he lets you reflect on it afterwards is also telling, because I believe that that's an extremely important part. Now, one thing that you said that really, I was having a conversation with my good friend last night about this, is he's what I would call a hard-headed skeptic. So, you know, he comes from the mindset of what's to say that these people aren't making it up, or people lie for any reason. They don't need a reason to lie. So when you said that these people, if they were really great actors, it really kind of, it's interesting you said that, because I said that same thing of like, they'd have to be really, really good actors to break down in tears and start sobbing about their husband that they didn't even know existed 5 minutes ago passed away before they were ready to have him pass away, or that's just an example. But they would have to be Hollywood level actors to show that kind of emotion.
Yes, I agree with you. Here's my concern and my issue. I think a lot of people have had experiences, and I put that word in quotes, okay? People have had experiences. They've had memories. They've had dreams. They've had past life experiences. They've had thoughts, okay? They've had conversations. They've met people. There's such negativity about talking about this topic, Ian. It's so disturbing. It's regressive and suppressive. To really understand and get a handle on what's happening with past lives and past life regression, we need to encourage people to talk about their experiences and not suppress people, so that, just like I did as a teenager, I ran in the other direction because I just didn't know what to do with the information. And anytime I brought it up to people, as I was growing up, I got shut down. You know what I mean? People laughed, they made snide comments, there were criticisms, you're being anti-religious, you're going into a bizarre realm. I heard it all. I've heard it all over the years. But the reality is it's healthy to be skeptical, but it's not healthy to suppress the information, because we all have an interest in what happens after death. We all have an interest on some level, some people more than others, but we all have an interest. And in order to encourage people, because they're really in the forefront of this, to encourage people who have had past life memories, dreams, past life experiences, to encourage them to talk about their experiences so that we get more of a handle. We have an opportunity to collect stories, to write about stories that we've heard, to encourage investigation, inquiry, scientific studies. We need to have people talk about these things and not shut them down. Do you agree with me?
Yes, absolutely, 100%. It's very stigmatized, the whole entire thing, in Western society anyways. And that kind of falls under the Christian umbrella, right? In Christian and Western society, it's very stigmatized, like you were saying. It's really unfortunate. And like I was saying kind of before the episode started, there's some accredited medical organizations that condemn past life regression. The reason that they do that is because it's all about evidence. So there's no way as of right now that I can, with hard evidence, prove that reincarnation is real, right? So their take on it is that when you're regressing someone into a past life regression, you're not remembering past lives, you're implanting delusions in their head.
Okay.
Now, I disagree with that based off my personal experiences, but it is unfortunately very stigmatized, exactly like what you were saying.
But to me, this is the whole area of, I understand what you were saying before about, psychology, but, the whole area of psychoanalysis and how it started, and, the movement towards understanding not just the psyche and the psychological experience, but, dream therapy and looking at childhood memories. it took years of inquiry and investigation to bring it into its own so that it became a mainstream process. And that's the point I'm trying to make. In order to move this along so that it does have some meaning and it can benefit society, we need to understand it better. And the only way we can really understand it is to begin the process of collecting stories and talking to people about their experiences. But, stigmatizing people and suppressing people from talking about it is the exact opposite thing that we need to do as, a society, so that we better understand what we're actually experiencing. I mean, I would not want to repeat what I had growing up, listening to people talk to me about, why this was not, a healthy thing to talk about. I wouldn't want to ever say to a child who is going through a similar experience, don't talk about that. It's not healthy, or it's not the traditional religious thing to discuss. It doesn't fit.
Or you're making it up.
Right. You're making it up.
Yeah.
Okay. We don't talk to children like that today, whether it's, social experiences that they're having, memory experiences, sexual experiences. We don't talk to people that way today because, there's, much more of an awareness about accepting and acknowledging and then collecting stories so that we're able to better validate what people are saying. It's the validation here that becomes so critical to the experience.
Right. And in documenting those things, what you're doing is you're creating data points, right?
Yes.
So the example that I was using in my discussion with my friend, my skeptic friend, was, if all these random people who have nothing to do with each other, they don't know each other, it's cross-cultural, it's cross religious denomination, it's cross race, right? A lot of these people are experiencing similar things, especially when we look at the phenomenon of near-death experiences. A lot of these people are experiencing almost the exact same thing, and that's across the world. Millions of people are experiencing these things, and as we document those things, we're able to say, like, okay, either there's pretty much only two options, either, or maybe three options if we're lucky. So every one of those people is a liar, right? Or it's a mass delusion, or people are actually experiencing these things separately. And that's the data point that I usually bring up, is like, people are experiencing these things separately, because a lot of the people that are experiencing them, they had no idea beforehand of near-death experiences. They had no idea what is typically seen in near-death experiences, but they're still seeing the same thing as John Smith across the world in Australia, right? Or whoever. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yes, absolutely. And I think you're right. I think what's really important is that across all of these experiences, the shared points are data points. And those are the things that we need to collect and analyze and understand, so that we can take more of a scientific approach and deal with skeptics who are saying it's just out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah, and because you can't, unfortunately, it's all anecdotal evidence, right? It's pretty much all, at this point, collecting stories and verifying data that way. So there's no hard evidence. Like, I can't quantify when my soul leaves my body, there's an electrical discharge out of the top of my head, or whatever there would be. So unfortunately, a lot of mainstream scientists, they won't even touch this with a 10-foot pole because of that.
Right.
And that's kind of interesting. Your book, Tenure Denied, that's right along the lines of exactly why people don't want to touch this, is because their tenure, their livelihood, their money is at risk, and it's a really toxic culture where, okay, you're venturing into unknown territory, then we're gonna fire you from the university you work at, and you're not gonna get your tenure or your money, and that honestly goes against how science should work. It should be about discovery, and it should be about quantifying the unknown. That's what science should be. But in this field, it's really being stifled, and it's really unfortunate that that's happening.
Right, right. So if you admit, even today, if you admit that, you have had a past life experience, or you have had past life memories, or even a near-death experience, okay, people are going to look at you like you're weird.
That's true. That is very
They're
true.
going to look at you like you're weird. There's, you're different. There's something wrong with you. You're weird.
Yeah, or you're just making it up.
Or you're just making it up for attention purposes. So how many people are really going to step into that kind of an arena and admit, that they've had experiences like that? So in a sense, the place that we'd like to get to as a cultural group, we'd like to get to the point where, we have a clear-cut understanding of what these experiences really are. What are they really? What does that word mean anyway? Really? Really? Is it real? What does that mean? What does real mean? So, the only way we're going to get there is if we have people talk about it and share.
Right. And to be fair, on the other side of the coin, there are some doctors and some scientists who have been documenting this for about 40 years. Dr. Weiss, he's one of them. But there's also a couple different ones out there. Like there's one that has documented deathbed visions. And these people they are not on drugs. They're fully lucid. They're approaching the end of their life. And they wake up and they say, "Oh, my wife, my wife who passed away 10 years ago, she visited me last night." And they're fully lucid. They're not like having, like I said, there's no drugs. These people they're not Alzheimer's patients or dementia patients. They're fully lucid people who are just naturally, their bodies are shutting down. They're just old people approaching their natural death. And they're seeing these things. And this doctor, I'll have to find him and link it in the description so people can check it out. But they almost live like half in and half out of this reality.
Okay.
It's kind of weird to describe, and it is weird, like just talking about it, because like you said, there is a lot of social pressure of like, okay, Ian's going crazy, Ian's nuts over here, but he has been able to document a lot of these cases where these fully lucid people who are not on drugs have had these deathbed visions and deathbed visitors, and they've had conversations with them, and these people have described it to them fully lucid. So that begs the question, where does that come from? Are all these people just hallucinating?
Right. You're absolutely right. Are all these people hallucinating, or are they all lying? They're all making it up.
Yeah, or is it a mass delusion?
It's a mass, right.
But I didn't even know about that beforehand. I didn't even have any idea that, like, I had some idea of like, okay, grandpa's 93 years old and he's suffering from dementia, and now all of a sudden he's talking about grandma who died 20 years ago, and he's talking about her being there. Like, okay, I can write that off, right? He's got dementia. Obviously, his mind is playing tricks on him because he's dying. He wants to see his wife. It's a delusion. Or at least that's what the data says anyways. But then all of a sudden you throw in completely lucid people who had no idea that this was even going to happen beforehand, which is a lot of the cases. When they're approaching their death, they don't know that this happens, and it happens to a lot of people.
Yes, it does. A lot of people.
Like go ask any nurse who works with older people who die, for the audience. If you don't believe me, go ask any nurse who's worked with older patients how many times they've seen deathbed visions like this, and
Right.
you'll be surprised at the answer. It's a huge number of people, and a lot of them are here in the West anyway. They're Christian people who don't believe in this,
Right.
and they're still talking about it. So I don't see a mass delusion, and I don't see millions of liars just lying for attention on their deathbed.
Right.
What's it gonna
But
get
the
them?
fact of the matter is, Ian, there are a number of Eastern philosophies and Eastern religions that are much more accepting of these kinds of ideas. We're not so accepting in the West. So I think the adjustment has to be on our side of the fence, so to speak, because I think there's more of an interest that's peaking about past lives and near-death experiences. Maybe people are uncomfortable talking about it at this point, but I think there is much more of an interest being expressed, and I think over time, people like Dr. Weiss, will come more to the forefront in terms of advocating for some of these methods and also some of these ideas.
I tend to agree with you. I think that humanity as a whole is kind of almost, especially like the younger generation coming up. A lot of the younger generation is saying we don't want to be associated with organized religion, that traditionally like Christianity and things like that. We want to go and find our own way, right? I think that humanity is almost on the verge of a spiritual awakening. That's kind of where I'm at in my belief system. And I do think that this is very important. And I do think that more people need to step up to the forefront and say, look, we can learn lessons from this. Imagine, like, have you ever heard of what's called a life review?
No.
So a lot of people, when they go through a near-death experience where they die, they're clinically dead, and then they're resuscitated, they'll have what's called a near-death experience. In this near-death experience, they'll go through and like a huge amount of the time, they start off by floating above their body and looking down at their body and going, oh, okay, I'm dead, right? It's just kind of like a natural thing. They're not scared. They're not afraid. It's just very comfortable, matter of fact. Oh, I'm dead, and then they'll go and they'll usually meet some kind of an entity, or some people will call it God. Some people will see Buddha. Some people will see Jesus, right? They'll see some kind of an entity, and then they'll go through what's called a life review. And commonly in these life reviews, what they'll do is they will experience their whole life. And not just from their perspective, they'll experience it from every perspective of every person that they've affected.
Okay.
And it's a huge experience. So they see, like, I was having a bad day one day and I bumped into somebody on the road and I flipped him off and called him an idiot and walked away. So you get to feel like how that person felt, essentially, right? And what you can do is, I don't know if you've looked into Michael Newton at all, but he has this thing called life between life regressions. And this life between life regression essentially takes you to that point where you've died and you're going through this life review, and then you get to you're in the process of choosing your next life. And I've actually done this myself to somebody, where you're choosing your next life and you get to choose what lessons you're trying to learn in the next life, or what you're wanting to experience, or what you're trying to accomplish, or what have you. So imagine if we as a species had more common practice of doing these life between life regressions and learning why we chose the life we chose, or what lessons we're trying to learn in our life. I would imagine that we would be able to take our society and exponentially progress.
Yes, I think it's in Dr. Weiss's book, Messages from the Masters. He talks about this, and he describes and discusses this between life process where, you have literally an opportunity to go over the experiences that you had. You have a period of reflection, and then you have an opportunity, as you're saying, to consider, coming back and learning additional lessons. And you have a choice about the life that you actually choose and that you have. And it's very interesting that, depending on the kinds of challenges, that's the kind of life that, gives you the best learning experience. The life in which you're most enriched is the life in which you have the greatest number of challenges to face.
Right. And it might not be fun while you're here living it, right?
Right.
But after the fact, a lot of these people who have experienced this will say that was a very enriching life. Even though, from our perspective as a human, it's very difficult. Living in poverty, in extreme poverty, where you don't know if you're going to be able to eat for a week.
Right.
That's very difficult. And it's, you're full of anxiety, but there are lessons to be learned in everything.
Yes. What I would share with you is that one of my closest friends, I gave her the book, Many, Many Lives, Many Masters, also written by Dr. Weiss. But after she read it, she came to me and she said to me, well, this is very hard. I'm Catholic, and, my belief system is that, I live this one life, and, when I die, I go into the loving arms of Jesus. And I said to her, okay, what's what is your issue about having additional lives? And she said to me, and I thought it was really interesting, because she said to me, this life was hard enough. This was difficult enough going through this. Why would I want to repeat this? Why would I want to do this again? And I understood what she was saying. It is very difficult. Every life has its challenges, and she's right. Life is very difficult. It's very complicated and complex, but that's the richest of experiences in terms of benefit to your soul, and your soul is eternal.
Yeah. And, it is difficult, and it's very uncomfortable to challenge that belief of, I'm going to live this one life, and when I die, it's going to be easy. It's all downhill from there,
Right.
And, I've had experiences where I've talked to people here, because I've never said this on the podcast before, but I grew up Mormon. Okay. I don't know if you're familiar with that at all.
Yes.
So I grew up Mormon, and I'm no longer associated with the religion, but I can see from that kind of lens. I can look at this through that kind of a lens, and it's scary to challenge your belief systems in any way, right? And when people do that, when you're maybe that's part of your life lesson, right? But I kind of forgot where I was going with this, but the whole point of this show is to get a new perspective on that kind of stuff. And for the audience, I'll link all these different books and things in the description so that you can find them. Continuing with that, moving on from the potential of just living one life and everything like that, did you experience yourself a regression from Dr. Weiss?
No, I did not. I went through that week with him, giving myself an opportunity to sort of sit back and process all of it, because I was also dealing with, my childhood experience and trying to understand, what did I want to do with that after all of these years? How did I want to integrate that into my life at this point? And I think the opportunity to observe everything was extraordinary for me. So that was number one. And I think the second thing was to use the experience that I had with Dr. Weiss that week and do something productive with it. Okay. So I could take that manuscript and rewrite it, and I'd have a product of what I was feeling and what I was thinking about the entire area of past lives, and what I was thinking and feeling about myself. And in a sense, the character that I created was a projection of myself, because she was a psychologist. She taught in a university. She served on a university personnel committee. These were all my experiences. So I was able to, in a sense, use Caitlin Morris, who was the main character, use her as a way of helping me integrate the experience that I had had with Dr. Weiss into my present life experience. So all the way around, I think that's what I'm trying to drive at, Ian. All the way around, this was a very centralizing opportunity for me. And also it gave me a chance to reflect on, a childhood experience that I had had that was really very, when I look back on it, it was very traumatic, because I really didn't know what to do with it as a child. And I didn't know how to integrate it into my present life. And I think that's what's really critical about having a past life, that you have an opportunity to learn something about yourself in your present life. You have a past life, you have a set of experiences, you roll that forward in terms of your love relationships, you roll that forward in terms of some of the decisions that you're making in your life, and you're able to integrate your past life experiences into your present life. And it enriches you going forward. I think it also gives you some peace of mind that there is an eternity that you've tapped into, and you have an opportunity to experience that eternity in your present life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It absolutely does. It's almost like having your own army of people who've done it all before that you can call on.
Right, exactly.
And that kind of goes back to what I was saying before of, imagine if we could tap into this. If we're making an important life decision, we go, okay, I need help. But I don't want to go out and ask someone else for help. This is a decision I need to make personally. So we go and we do a past life regression, and we are able to be led to a life where we were in a similar situation, and we see how we reacted before and how that played out. And then we come out and we reflect on that, and we say, okay, this has really helped me. This has really helped me to figure out what I need to do. That would be a very powerful experience.
Yes, I have to tell you, Ian, you just tapped into something that's really amazing, because that's exactly what my main character does in Tenure Denied. She's dealing with a murder, and she taps into her past life, and it helps her solve the murder.
That's awesome. Yeah, and again, Tenure Denied. It was the book written by Ellenmorris Tiegerman. Check it out on Amazon, everybody. And I'm gonna plan on reading it, and I'll let you know. Once I finally get some time to read it, I'll let you know what I think. But it sounds fascinating because it sounds right in line with exactly what I'm talking about.
Yes, it is exactly.
Yeah, and I think I think it's possible. I think it really is. If you look back, I've heard a lot of different stories about Egypt and China and ancient Mayans having these things called what they call sleep temples, where essentially people would go in and they would do hypnosis and astral projection and things like that. And they would do past life regressions with a priest. It was like a temple dedicated to doing this.
Right.
And, if we had something like that, I think that we would be in really good shape as a society moving forward. So have you ever done a past life regression?
No, I have never done a past life regression with a therapist. I have not.
Is it something that interests you at all to do or consider doing?
Yes, I absolutely would consider doing that. Absolutely. I think at this point in my life, given, the experiences that I've had, I would definitely do it. And I seriously, I encourage people to explore that as an opportunity for themselves. Absolutely.
I do too. And, but I could be a little bit biased because I do these past life regressions. And Dr. Weiss, he has like a 30-minute session that he put on YouTube where he does the regression that you can follow along. So I'll link that in the description. So if anybody wants to check that out, we definitely can. And I encourage you to go in there and just look at it as relaxing. That's all it really is. You're just relaxing your body. You're going in and regardless of whether or not it's real, right? For the skeptics out there, regardless of whether or not it's real, it's a real experience. You're going to have some kind of an experience. You could see something, or maybe you'll just go into a very deep state of relaxation and come out feeling refreshed. There's literally no downsides.
The only thing that I would add to that, Ian, for your listeners, is that this is a meditative experience. So look at it as a journey, that it's the process that's really important here. It's not the end result. Don't feel any pressure about meditating and discovering a past life the first time you do this. This is a process. It takes people months, sometimes years, but that's okay. There's no pressure and nobody's, grading you on the experience. So you should look at it as, a learning process, a learning experience, and something that teaches you about reflection and very deep relaxation.
Right. You hit the nail right on the head. What I usually tell people when my clients that I regress, what I tell them is it's very important when going through this, that while you're going through the meditation or the hypnosis, that just watch it like you're watching a movie or going to a play, right? You don't need to analyze it while it's happening. Just enjoy the experience. And a lot of the time you'll just be very, very relaxed when you come out of it.
Right.
One way or the other.
Exactly.
Well, thank you very much for coming on the show, Ellenmorris. Is there anything else that you'd like to leave my audience with?
Well, I really want to thank you and, all of your listeners. And Ian, I hope you invite me back.
Absolutely. I would love to have you back. Maybe we could do a past life regression for you, and then you come back on the show and talk about it.
Okay, absolutely.
Perfect. Well, again, thank you so much for your time. And again, check out Ellenmorris Tiegerman's book, Tenure Denied. It's on Amazon. There's a link in the show notes. And Tiegerman.org, where you can donate to her charity where she assists children through adults with learning disabilities. That's it for today's episode. I would like to thank Ellenmorris for coming onto the show and sharing her time with me. And I would also like to thank you for tuning in. And be sure to check out Ellenmorris's book, Tenure Denied. And if it interests you and you want to support a noble cause, head over to Tiegerman.org, and there's a link to that in the description. If you've had a past life experience, or if you're a psychic medium, or if you're another past life regression practitioner, or whatever piece of the puzzle that you're into, shoot me an email. My email is theregressionsession@gmail.com, and I would love to have you on the show.
Can you see beyond your mind? Can you shed a light on the treasure that you are? Can you be at ease for a moment? need to try so hard. Realize you're right where you need to be. You had it from the very start. Hidden in your heart, there's a remedy.